The morning light arrived at Metropolitan Hospital in shades of pale gold, the kind of early spring illumination that made everything look both hopeful and exhausted. It was 6:47 a.m., that peculiar hour when night shift workers stumbled out like survivors of a battle they had just won. The parking lot was nearly empty. A handful of vehicles scattered across the asphalt, their owners having already passed through the hospital doors and into the fluorescent-lit corridors of human suffering and healing. Marcusina Johnson stepped out of her 2015 Honda Civic with the careful precision of someone whose body had been pushed past its comfortable limits. Her scrubs were stained. Coffee on the left sleeve, probably from when she spilled a cup during a code blue around 4 a.m. A streak of something rust-colored on her right hip that she did not want to think about too closely. Her hair, naturally voluminous and beautiful, had been forced into a practical bun nearly 14 hours ago. Now it was trying to break free in small rebellious coils around her hairline. She was 41 years old, and this morning she felt every single one of those years. The night shift had been catastrophic. 2 car accident victims, 1 in critical condition, 3 regular admissions, 1 who looked like acute appendicitis, 1 with chest pain that turned out to be cardiac-related, 1 who was just old and tired and needed someone to check her vitals and give her warm blankets. And then the codes. Never just one code. Always multiple. Always urgent. Always requiring that specific kind of presence that only comes from years of training and an internal commitment that had been forged in a completely different place, a completely different time. Marcusina moved through the parking lot like someone walking through water. Her legs felt heavy, her mind felt soft. She was thinking about sleep, real deep, uninterrupted sleep where nothing was bleeding or flatlined or in pain. She was thinking about the dark fabric of her blackout curtains, the absolute silence of her bedroom where the world could not reach her. She did not notice the patrol car at first. It was a Springdale Police Department cruiser, white with blue stripes, the kind of vehicle that most people saw and felt either relief or apprehension depending on their life experience. Officer Daniel Cole was behind the wheel. He was driving the lot with a particular kind of slowness. The kind that suggested he was looking for something, or someone. Cole was 38, white. He had the kind of build that came from aggressive weight training and a diet heavy in protein shakes. He had a square jaw that he had been told looked authoritative. He had internalized this feedback into his identity. The badge meant something to him, not in the sense of public service, but in the sense of permission, permission to assert, permission to investigate, permission to control. He had been with Springdale PD for 11 years. In that time, he had developed a reputation for being difficult, though his supervisors could not quite articulate what made him difficult in the official sense. He was just aggressive, they would say. He escalates situations, but nothing he does is quite wrong enough to document formally. Cole had run into Marcusina before. Not personally. They had never spoken. But he had seen her around the hospital parking lot, always early in the morning or late at night, always wearing scrubs, always carrying herself with a particular kind of dignity that Cole found vaguely irritating. He could not articulate why. It just was. This morning his radio had been quiet for the past hour, and Cole found quiet to be intolerable. Quiet meant no interactions. Quiet meant no opportunity to exercise the authority that he had spent 11 years accruing. He saw Marcusina crossing toward the staff entrance. Something in her bearing triggered something in him. The straightness of her spine, the measured pace, the way she seemed entirely comfortable moving through this space. She looked like she belonged here. And yet Cole decided in a split second that would ripple outward in ways he could not predict that she needed to prove it. He pulled the cruiser slowly into her path, not quite blocking her, but close enough that she would have to acknowledge his presence. Marcusina stopped walking. Her exhaustion, which had been all-consuming a moment before, converted instantly into alertness. This was not a new sensation for her. Her body had learned years ago how to shift from one state to another based on external threats. She looked at the cruiser, made eye contact with Cole, and waited. Cole got out of the vehicle slowly, deliberately. He did not walk directly toward her. Instead, he angled his approach, a classic dominance technique that made it impossible for her to turn and leave without appearing to be running. "That your vehicle?" he asked, pointing to her Honda. "Yes," Marquesina said. Her voice was steady. This was important. The steadiness was a choice, a tactical decision made in the space of a heartbeat. "This is reserved parking," Cole said. It was not true. The loading zone had no signage claiming it was reserved. But Marquesina did not immediately contradict him. She waited to see where this was going. "I work here," she said. She pulled the hospital badge from the pocket of her scrub top. It was laminated plastic with her photo, her name, and her title clearly printed. Marquesina Johnson. R.N.E.R. Department. Cole looked at the badge. He looked at her face. He looked at the badge again. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 15 years, Marquesina said. "I.D." Cole said. He did not ask for it. He commanded it. Marquesina reached for her wallet, extracting her driver's license. She held it out. Cole took it. He studied it with exaggerated intensity, as if he were looking for something hidden in the laminate. "Where are you coming from this morning?" he asked. "I just finished my shift," Marquesina said. 12 hours. Night shift. "That is a long shift," Cole said. He said it like it was suspicious. "Yes," Marquesina said. "That is how night shift works." Cole's jaw tightened slightly at the faint edge in her tone. Not quite sarcasm, just the smallest indication that she was not going to pretend this was a normal, reasonable interaction. "You seem nervous," Cole said. "I am tired," Marquesina said. "I worked all night." Cole handed back her ID, but his eyes did not leave her face. "I am going to need to verify that you actually work here," he said. "Those badges can be forged." This was the moment where something shifted. Marquesina felt it the way you feel a change in air pressure before a storm. This was no longer a routine check. This was something else. "My work schedule is in the hospital's system," she said. "You can verify with security. They are right inside." "I will verify however I see fit," Cole said. He called something into his radio. He requested a second officer to his location, the hospital parking lot. He did not say why. And that is when Marquesina realized that people could see this happening. The glass doors of the hospital's main entrance were visible from where they stood. Several nurses were walking in, starting their morning shifts. A security guard had paused inside the glass vestibule. Someone at one of the upper windows, maybe administration, was watching. The interaction that had seemed contained between two people was now a performance. And Cole, whether he knew it consciously or not, was beginning to play to an audience. The second officer arrived within 3 minutes. He was younger than Cole, probably mid-20s. He had the kind of uncertain energy that suggested he was still early in his career, still learning what the job meant, still believing some of the things he had been taught in the academy about service and protection. His name was Officer Ramirez, and he was immediately uncomfortable. Cole had already begun walking around Marquesina's vehicle. He was examining it with the careful attention of someone looking for contraband. Ramirez arrived to find his partner peering into the Honda's windows, his hand touching the doorframe, his posture communicating authority and suspicion in equal measure. "What are we looking at?" Ramirez asked. "Possible trespassing," Cole said. "Maybe casing vehicles. Female claims to work here. But her story does not quite line up." It did not line up because Cole had asked her 2 contradictory questions, one about her arrival time and one about her shift schedule. Then he decided that her different answers meant she was lying. In reality, she had been consistent. In Cole's interpretation, she had failed some invisible test. Marquesina felt her chest tighten. She had been a nurse long enough to know the signs of a situation escalating. She had witnessed it countless times in the ER. A patient arriving agitated, a family member frustrated. And then the moment where the emotional temperature rose and the probability of violence increased exponentially. She understood de-escalation. She understood that the best response to an unreasonable authority figure was not to match their unreasonableness, but to remain steady. But she was so tired. "I can call my supervisor," Marquesina offered. "She can verify my employment from inside." "That will not be necessary," Cole said. He was looking at her car now with increased intensity, as if he had found something. "Pop the trunk." "I do not need to do that," Marquesina said. "I have not violated any laws. I work here. This is the staff parking area." Cole's face flushed. This was defiance from his perspective. This was someone questioning his authority. "Pop the trunk," he said again. His hand moved slightly closer to his belt. Ramirez noticed the hand movement. His discomfort elevated. Marquesina walked to her car and opened the trunk. Inside was a gym bag, a spare tire, a blanket, some jumper cables, 2 books sitting on top of a gym bag. She had been meaning to return them to the library. Cole looked at everything as if it were evidence in a crime. "What is in the bag?" he asked. "Gym clothes," Marquesina said. "I go to the gym sometimes, after shift, to decompress." "You have time to go to the gym after a 12-hour shift?" Cole asked. He said it like this was damning, like having a mechanism for dealing with stress was somehow suspicious. "Not today," Marquesina said. "Today I am going home to sleep, like a normal person would do after working all night." This time the edge in her voice was more pronounced. Ramirez shifted his weight. He shot Cole a look that suggested this was probably fine. Probably nothing. Probably they should move on. But Cole was not moving on. He reached into the trunk and opened the gym bag without asking permission. Inside were clothes, a water bottle, a towel, a small toiletry bag. "You travel a lot," Cole said. It was an observation, but the implication was accusatory. "No," Marquesina said. "I go to the gym. That is what the gym bag is for." Cole closed the gym bag and pulled out one of the books. It was a volume on trauma-informed care. The other was about building resilience in healthcare workers. "You read about trauma?" Cole asked. "I work in emergency medicine," Marquesina said. "Yes, I read about trauma." Cole closed the trunk with more force than necessary. Around them, the hospital parking lot was becoming more active. Day shift workers were arriving, parking their vehicles, heading inside. Some of them were slowing down as they passed, taking in the scene with their eyes. Marquesina could feel their gazes on her back. Ramirez said quietly to Cole, "I think we are good here." Cole ignored him. "I want you to step away from your vehicle," Cole said to Marquesina. "Why?" she asked. "Because I am asking you to," Cole said. Marquesina closed her eyes for a moment. Then she stepped away. Cole began a more thorough search now, opening the door, checking under the seats, reaching for the glove compartment. There was nothing incriminating there. Her registration, her insurance card, a phone charger, some receipts. Hospital staff continued to arrive. A nurse that Marquesina recognized. Jennifer, who worked the evening shift, walked past and slowed down. Recognition crossed her face. She kept walking, but her eyes lingered. A doctor emerged from the entrance, saw the cruiser and the uniforms, pulled out his phone. He might have been photographing. He might have just been making a call. Ramirez said again very quietly, "Cole, man, she is fine." But Cole was not interested in fine. He was interested in something else, in the possibility that he was right about something, in the validation of his instincts, in the ability to say at the end of this interaction that he had been justified in stopping her. He emerged from the vehicle with nothing. "Empty your pockets," he said to Marcusina. "No," she said. The word hung in the air between them like a challenge. "I am sorry," Cole said. "I am not emptying my pockets without a legal reason," Marcusina said. "You have not cited me with anything. You have not told me what I have done. You have not read me my rights. I know my rights, officer. I am not emptying my pockets." Cole stepped closer to her. "You have a choice," he said. "You empty your pockets voluntarily, or I find other reasons to take this further. Obstructing an officer, maybe. Disrespecting law enforcement. Refusing a lawful order." And here was where Marcusina made a calculation. She was exhausted. She wanted to go home. She wanted this to be over. Fighting about her constitutional rights was not going to get her home faster. She reached into her pockets and pulled out her keys, her phone, her wallet. She held them in her hand. Cole took the wallet. He opened it carefully, pulled out her ID again, examined it longer than necessary, then opened her hospital badge folder. The badge was there. Her name, her photo, her department, her employee ID number. "How long did you say you have worked here?" Cole asked. 15 years, Marcusina said. Cole closed the wallet. He handed it back to her without comment. He walked around her slowly, the way a predator circles, looking for a weakness. "I know your type," he said quietly. Marcusina felt something shift inside her, some internal equilibrium that she had been maintaining through sheer force of will began to crack. "Excuse me," she said. "I know your type," Cole repeated. "You come into an area where you do not belong. You act like you own the place. You disrespect authority. You refuse to cooperate. I have dealt with 100 people just like you." Ramirez stepped forward slightly. "Cole," he said. His voice was low but firm. "That is enough." But Cole was not done. "I know what you people do," he said. "You get in where you do not belong. You create problems. You make life difficult for people who are just trying to do their jobs." Marcusina's hands were shaking slightly, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "I am done with this conversation," she said. She turned and started walking toward the hospital entrance. Cole did not like being dismissed. "We are not finished," he said. He moved to intercept her. Stepping into her path, Marcusina stopped walking. They were now roughly in the middle of the parking lot, equidistant between the hospital and Cole's cruiser. The morning traffic had been building steadily. There were now at least 20 people visible from the hospital entrance, either arriving for day shift, heading into work, or just watching from inside. "Step aside," Marcusina said. "Not until we have finished our conversation," Cole said. "We are finished," Marcusina said. "I have cooperated with your inspection. I have shown you my credentials. You have found nothing. Our conversation is over. I am going to walk to the hospital now." She tried to move around him. Cole reached out and grabbed her arm. His grip was not gentle. It was the grip of someone asserting control. Someone saying with his body what his words had been saying all along. "You do not get to leave until I decide you do." Marcusina's body responded before her mind could catch up. She pulled away sharply, yanking her arm free, and that was all Cole needed. "You are resisting," he said. "You are resisting an officer." "I am not resisting," Marcusina said. Her voice was still level despite her racing heart. "I am walking away from an officer who is unlawfully restraining me." Ramirez stepped closer. "Cole, she is staff here. She is a nurse. We need to let this go. But Cole's mind had already constructed a narrative. In that narrative, Marcusina Johnson was an uncooperative suspect who had escalated, who had resisted, who had demonstrated aggression toward an officer of the law. "Put your hands behind your back," Cole said. "No," Marcusina said. Cole reached for her arm again, more aggressively this time. Marcusina pulled away again. Cole's face flushed with anger and what looked like humiliation. Being defied even in this small way was intolerable to him. "You are under arrest for resisting an officer," Cole said. He reached for his handcuffs. And that is when the hospital's glass doors opened. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been watching from inside, stepped out into the morning air. She was the chief of emergency medicine. She was 48. She had dealt with angry patients, grieving families, traumatized individuals for the better part of 2 decades. She knew how to assess a dangerous situation. This was a dangerous situation. "Officer Cole," she said. Her voice carried authority. "I am going to need you to step back." Cole ignored her. "Ma'am, please return inside." "This is police business," he said. He did not take his eyes off Marcusina. Dr. Chen continued walking toward them. "This is hospital business," she said. "That is one of our employees, and I am going to need you to release her immediately." Behind her, more hospital staff emerged. A security guard, broad-shouldered and calm, 2 nurses, an orderly. They came out like a tide, not moving aggressively, just making it clear that Marcusina Johnson was not alone in this parking lot. Cole looked around. He seemed to realize for the first time that he was now outnumbered, but he did not release his grip on Marcusina's arm. Instead, he held it tighter. "This is an unlawful gathering," he said. "Everyone needs to go back inside." "Nobody is gathering," Dr. Chen said. "Everyone just stepped out to witness whatever is happening here, for documentation purposes." Several phones had appeared in the hands of hospital staff. Some were recording. Some were just positioned suggestively enough that Cole would know they were recording. Ramirez had already stepped back, his hand raised slightly in a gesture of non-involvement. This was not what he had signed up for. This was not a routine parking lot check. This was something else entirely. Officer Cole Ramirez said quietly, "Let us let this go." Cole finally released Marcusina's arm, but his eyes remained locked on hers, communicating something that looked like a promise of future consequence. "You are not done here," he said quietly. "Yes, I am," Marcusina said. Dr. Chen placed a hand on Marcusina's shoulder. Together they began walking toward the hospital entrance. The security guard turned his back to Cole and matched pace with them. The other staff members followed, creating a physical barrier between Marcusina and the officers. Cole stood in the middle of the parking lot, defeated and fuming, while his young partner looked at him with something that might have been disappointment, might have been fear, might have been both. The doors to the hospital closed behind Marcusina and her defenders. Inside, in the bright fluorescent lights of the main lobby, Marcusina began to shake. Dr. Chen guided her to a chair. Marcusina sat down, and for the first time since she had stepped out of her car nearly 20 minutes ago, she let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. "Are you okay?" Dr. Chen asked. Marcusina did not answer immediately. She was trying to determine if she was okay. Her arm ached where Cole had gripped it. Her heart was still racing. Her exhaustion had transformed into a different kind of fatigue. The emotional depletion that came from being profiled, questioned, disrespected, and physically restrained by someone who was supposed to represent law and order. She was not okay. That was excessive, one of the nurses said. "Jennifer, I got it all on video." "Me too," another staff member said. "I have it from 3 angles," a third said. Marcusina realized that her humiliation had been documented. The entire hospital staff would know about this. The story would spread. By the end of the day, probably half the people in the hospital would have heard something about the time a cop hassled Marquesina in the parking lot. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. Some decision was made. Some internal resistance to speaking her truth began to crumble. Over the next hour, Marquesina did not go home. Instead, she went to the hospital administration office. She knew what she needed to do. She knew that if she went home now and went to sleep, this would become just another story. Another anecdote about the disrespect that came with a certain kind of identity in America. She would process it privately. She would deal with the trauma alone. She would let it become something she carried quietly. But that was not the person she had become. She sat in the hospital's administrative offices with Dr. Chen, the security director Marcus Webb, and the hospital's legal counsel Patricia Morrison. She told them exactly what had happened. She answered their questions. She gave them permission to collect the video footage from the security cameras and the personal recordings made by staff members. Patricia said, "We can file a formal complaint with the police department. This constitutes harassment, unlawful detention, and possibly assault." "Do it," Marquesina said. What she did not say, but what everyone in the room understood, was that filing a complaint with the police department was like filing a complaint with the police department. The institution would defend its own. Nothing would happen. Cole would continue to work. The system would protect him. But Marquesina had already made a different decision. "I want to speak publicly about this," she said. Patricia raised her eyebrows slightly. "The hospital can issue a statement," Patricia said. "But I would advise against you speaking publicly. It can complicate legal proceedings." "I do not care about legal proceedings," Marquesina said. She was thinking clearly now despite her exhaustion, or maybe because of her exhaustion. Sometimes when you are too tired to maintain your filters, your true priorities emerge. I care about this not happening to someone else. I care about people knowing what happened here. I care about this officer not doing this again. Media attention, Patricia said, can be unpredictable. "So can I?" Marquesina said. She pulled out her phone and she called a friend. James, who worked as a news producer for one of the local television stations. She told him what happened. She said she wanted to go on the record. She said she wanted the community to know about a police officer who was using his badge as a tool of harassment. Within an hour, a camera crew was at the hospital. Marquesina stood in front of them, still wearing her stained scrubs, still looking like she had just finished a brutal shift. Because she had. And somehow that made her testimony more powerful. This was not a polished victim. This was someone who had just lived through something, who was still processing it, who was choosing to speak despite the exhaustion. "My name is Marquesina Johnson," she said to the camera. "I have worked as a nurse at Metropolitan Hospital for 15 years. This morning I was questioned, searched, harassed, and physically restrained by a police officer in the hospital parking lot. My only crime was existing while being black in a space where he decided I did not belong. And I think it is important that people know this happens. I think it is important that we talk about accountability." The interview aired that evening. By the next morning, the story had been picked up by regional news outlets. By the next day, it was on social media, being shared and commented on. And the very thing that Patricia had feared, that the officer's department would circle the wagons and protect him. That was exactly what began to happen. A spokesperson for the Springdale Police Department issued a statement. Officer Cole was conducting a routine security check in a public area. The department's early assessment shows that he followed protocol. We take all allegations seriously, and we are conducting a full investigation into the complaint. Translation: nothing would happen. But Marquesina had expected that. What she had not expected was how the community would respond. People who had been harassed by Springdale police started sharing their stories. People who had family members harassed by police started coming forward. A pattern began to emerge in the narrative. Springdale PD had a problem with how its officers interacted with communities of color. And Officer Daniel Cole became the face of that problem. He received hate mail. His social media was flooded. People knew where he lived. And while nobody was advocating violence, the boundary between accountability and harassment was becoming increasingly blurred. Cole's supervisor, Captain Morris, called him into the office. "You are creating a problem," Morris said. "The department's receiving complaints. The media's asking questions. You are becoming a liability." Cole's response was not humility or reflection. His response was anger and resentment. "I was doing my job," he said. "If the community does not like it, that is not my problem." She was suspicious. "I investigated. That is my job." "Your job is not to harass hospital employees," Morris said. "Your job is not to escalate routine interactions into confrontations. And your job is definitely not to create a situation where the department has to defend your behavior on camera." "So, what are you saying?" Cole asked. "That I did something wrong because I did not. I followed protocol." "I am saying," Morris said slowly, "that whether you followed protocol or not, this is becoming a public relations nightmare for us. And I am going to need you to take a few weeks off. Rest. Cool off. Let this blow over." Cole stood up to leave. And Morris said one more thing. "And Cole, do not talk to the media. Do not try to defend yourself. Do not make this worse." 3 weeks later, the Springdale Police Department received a request under the Freedom of Information Act. Someone wanted all body camera footage, all incident reports, all complaints filed against Officer Daniel Cole over the past 5 years. Someone. The hospital's legal team, possibly. Or someone from one of the advocacy groups that had begun rallying around Marquesina's case. Wanted to see the full picture. And what they found was not a good picture. Cole had 14 complaints in his personnel file. 14. Some had been resolved quietly. Some had resulted in short suspensions. Some had been dismissed on technicalities. But the pattern was undeniable. Most of the complaints came from people of color. Most involved aggressive behavior, unlawful detentions, or searches without probable cause. One case in particular drew attention. A young black woman had been stopped by Cole at a traffic light. He told her she was driving with a broken taillight. She had given him permission to search her vehicle. He found nothing, but in his report he wrote that she appeared suspicious and that he would need to investigate further. There was a follow-up visit to her home. There was never any charge brought. But the woman had been traumatized by the experience. Another case. An elderly black man had been stopped walking through the neighborhood after dark. Cole had suspected him of casing houses. The man had been cooperative, had shown his ID, had explained he was just taking an evening walk. Cole had nevertheless run him for warrants, called for backup, treated him like a criminal despite having no legal justification. The pattern suggested something beyond simple bias. It suggested a systematic approach to profiling. And then someone found Cole's personal social media accounts. The posts were ugly, deeply, unambiguously racist. Posts about those people and thugs and the problem with their culture. Posts that made his prejudice explicit and impossible to minimize or reframe. The Springdale Police Department held a press conference. Captain Morris stood at the podium with the police chief, a woman named Helen Rodriguez, who had been trying to reform the department since her appointment 2 years prior. "We are suspending Officer Daniel Cole effective immediately," Rodriguez said. "We are also launching a comprehensive investigation into his conduct. We are reviewing all cases in which he was the responding officer, and we are committed to ensuring that this department serves all members of our community equally and with respect." But Marquesina was not watching the press conference. She was at the hospital, working her shift. A colleague brought her the news. "Cole has been suspended," Jennifer said. "Did you see?" "No," Marquesina said. "She was administering medication to a patient." "I am working. The police chief basically said they are reviewing everything he has done, another nurse said, because of what you said on the news. Marquesina did not feel triumphant. She felt tired. She had gotten what she had asked for, in a sense. Accountability. But accountability is a strange thing. It is not the same as justice. It is not the same as the officer understanding what he had done wrong, apologizing, changing. It was just a procedural acknowledgement that he had violated his office. But it was something. That evening, a young black woman came to the ER with chest pain. While she was being evaluated, she told a nurse that she had been stopped by police multiple times in the past year, and every time she had been terrified. The last stop, she said, had been by Officer Cole, and she had been so frightened by his demeanor that she had developed a panic response to the sight of police cruisers. The nurse mentioned this to Marquesina, who was assigning patients to beds. "That is exactly why I said something," Marquesina said. The work continued. The hospital continued. The city continued. But something had shifted in the community's consciousness. People had seen a nurse stand up to a police officer and refuse to accept the disrespect. People had seen the community rally around her. People had seen the institution, a police department, forced to acknowledge that one of their officers had engaged in harassment. It was not justice, but it was accountability. And accountability is a beginning. 2 months after the incident, the Springdale Police Department announced the results of their investigation into Officer Daniel Cole's conduct. He was fired, not suspended, not reassigned. Fired. The decision was made in a closed session, but the outcome was public. And it was final. Cole appealed. His union representatives filed paperwork claiming he had been treated unfairly, that his due process had been violated, that he was the victim in this scenario. But in the court of public opinion, which was increasingly the court that mattered, Cole had lost. He could not find work in law enforcement in the surrounding area. Every police department had seen the news. Every precinct knew his name. He eventually took a job in security at a logistics company, a position that paid less, offered fewer benefits, a substantial step down from his career as a police officer. Marquesina, meanwhile, returned to her routine. She worked her shifts. She cared for patients. She came home exhausted and slept. But something had changed inside her. She had spoken her truth, and the act of speaking it had transformed her internally. She was no longer hiding her military service. When young staff members asked about the news coverage, about the confrontation, about Officer Cole, she answered honestly. "I served this country for 8 years, she would say. 2 combat tours in Iraq. I was a combat medic. I saw things that I will never unsee. And I came home. And I brought that service here, to this hospital, to this work. And I am not ashamed of where I came from. And I am not apologizing to anyone for existing." Young nurses, especially young black nurses, would listen to her talk about her military service, and something in them would shift. They would stand a little straighter. They would be a little less willing to accept disrespect. One evening after an overnight shift, a nurse named Demira came to Marquesina. "I saw what you did," Demira said, "with that cop. I saw you stand up to him, and I want you to know that it meant something to me, because I have been scared my whole life of situations like that, and watching you just refuse to be afraid or apologetic. It changed something for me." Marquesina did not know what to say. She had done what she did because she was tired and angry and done with accepting disrespect. She had not done it to be an example or a symbol. She had just done it because it was the only thing she could do and still respect herself. But she understood that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to accept the unacceptable. And in doing so, give others permission to do the same. The hospital initiated new protocols in the parking lot. Better signage. A clearer distinction between staff parking and visitor parking. a liaison position between hospital security and the police department, to help prevent future conflicts. It was not perfect. It was not comprehensive reform. But it was something. And in the life of one community, one institution, one group of people, it was enough. Months later, Marquesina would be sitting in the break room. She would overhear two young nurses talking about a confrontation they had had with a police officer. They would mention that they had recorded it, had reported it, had refused to accept disrespect. They cited Marquesina as their inspiration. She did not feel like an inspiration. She felt like someone who had just done what she had to do, but maybe that is what inspiration is. Not superhuman courage, but simply the choice to stand up when you could have stayed silent. The choice to speak when you could have accepted the narrative that was being imposed on you. The choice to believe that your voice matters, even if the system is designed to silence you. Marquesina Johnson went back to work the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. She treated patients. She saved lives. She mentored younger nurses. She lived her life as someone who had been tested and had not broken. And in doing so, she became something more powerful than any news story or viral video could ever convey. She became a living example of resistance and dignity, standing quietly in the fluorescent lights of a hospital, saving lives, one shift at a time. When people asked her about what happened, about Officer Cole, about the incident in the parking lot, she would tell them the truth. I just refused to accept what was not acceptable, and I would do it again. And that ultimately was the story that mattered. Not the confrontation, not the vindication, not the officer's suspension and eventual firing. The story that mattered was that a black woman, a military veteran, a nurse, had stood up and said, "I belong here. I deserve respect. And I am not apologizing for being myself." And in a world that so often demanded her apology for simply existing, that statement was the most powerful response of all.